be resourceful. You have to look around and say, okay, through my experience, what have I learned? What can I leverage? And what are the things that I've learned? What are the things that are missing?
Mhm.
What are the things I'm good at? And how can I knit that together for a great life and for a great business?
Yeah,
I
not
think,
everyone does that, by the way, soon.
yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
a
funny.
very powerful self-reflection to pause and ask those questions, you know?
Yeah, and like I said, I have a few friends on the call, and I think they would even recognize that when I first met them, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. I would say the
Mhm.
last 5, 7 years is when I really started to be open about this background. It was almost like this trauma that now I've been able to leverage and say, okay, well, how can I leverage that to do something great in the world?
Mhm. Wow, it is a powerful way to look back at your history and do that self-reflection. And because there's so many jewels in there about who you are. Yeah. So, as I said to you when we first met, I see your story not as a story that's not just about overcoming obstacles and challenges to create a great life, which certainly you have done that. But I see it more as more than that, someone who has shaped your life with purpose. That's what I see the through line is. And you express it in so many different ways. So, the theme of this is really about that. The theme of our talk today is how do you take these challenges and these really some hard life lessons and transform that into a purposeful life and a path forward? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have so much more choice in our life than we believe. I think a lot of people spend time saying, okay, this is the hand I was dealt, instead of saying, okay, looking at obstacles as opportunities. I mean, my big belief is your personal narrative, what you tell yourself every single time something happens determines your reality. So I can say, okay, woe is me. I can wallow my circumstances and say, okay, I was a refugee, or I moved to LA, didn't have a job, I struggled just to make ends meet. I had to have 2 jobs. Or I can say, wow, I get this cool opportunity to define myself, right?
Mhm.
I get this cool opportunity to move to LA and experiment. So I think the ability to look at obstacles as opportunities will transform your life. And I think your personal narrative, what you tell yourself every single day, determines the lens in which you make your decisions.
Yeah. And I want to pause and underscore that piece for a moment about choice and the narrative that we tell ourselves. It's so fascinating that you talk about that because it's such a core theme in coaching, which, is at the core of our program is, you know, a coach will ask the client, what is the story you're telling about this?
Yeah.
Because something could happen like you lose your job or your relationship falls apart or you didn't get the job that you thought or the promotion or whatever it is. And that's that moment of choice that you're talking about is I could be a victim
Yeah.
or I could see what's possible here. And of course, it's natural just for like a moment to feel like a victim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to experience it. You can't bury it so deep that it resonates in a negative way. You have to experience it. And my friends, a few of them who are on the call know this. I think it's again goes back to my immigrant background. Like if something negative happens, I'll talk about it for 5, 10 minutes, whatever it takes to get that through my system. But I move on really quickly.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance between experiencing disappointment or pain and saying, okay, how can I spring forward from this? How can I fail forward? How can I learn forward? To me, it's always about being forward. And whether it's a good or a bad thing, I mean, my husband jokes like like he'll give me like a birthday card, I'll read it and then I'll throw it in the trash. And he's like, what the hell? And I'm like, and I don't like now I have to hide throwing it in the trash. And it's this subconscious thing. It's not like I don't now I've started a box to hold cards. It's like right over here in my bookshelf. But I think it's being in that background. My parents never, it was too painful to look back at their life because they literally had to leave their parents, their siblings, all their loved ones, and they can only move forward. So that's just kind of my background, is to be able to say, experience the pain, but there's only one path and it's forward.
Wow. That's a powerful statement. There's only one path and it's forward. Yeah, yeah. So I know that one of the one of the big leaps that you made in your life was leaving a stable career in PR to create your own and build your own agency, and you were 30 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit about that story, and especially what gave you the courage to take that leap, because we have a lot of courageous women in our community. I know many of them are on the call right now. And there are certainly times when we are in that situation, standing at the edge of a big decision. And, you know, you get scared because you're not sure what's on the other side of that. So I'd love to hear your story, and especially that the piece about what did give you the courage to do it.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I think it was less of a leap and more being pushed off a cliff, I would say. I, I worked at a PR agency in LA, and after 7 years, I was in talks to take over the business. And the day that my boss and I were to meet with the management consultant, he got cold feet. So and I was being recruited by global PR firms to run their practices. And he said, he pulled the deal. And I was completely distraught because this was my plan. And so I did something I've never done before, which is I literally quit on the spot.
Mm.
And I went home, I cried for, 24 hours, and a mentor of mine called and said, "Stop your crying. You're going to start your own business." And so
That's the kind of mentor you want.
yeah, yeah. And so I really pondered that, and I thought, okay, what are my choices? I had just bought a condo, right? So I was like locked in. But then I realized, when you said stable job, I think that's interesting because people have asked me that before. Is working for somebody really that stable?
Yeah.
You're actually in somebody else's hands,
Mhm.
right? You're in the hands of the economy. You're in the hands of your coworkers. You're in the hands of a leader. So I think, like, to me, you got to have confidence that you're best in your own hands. Like,
Mhm.
and
I
so,
want to tell you, we just got a text from Oxanne who says in all caps, "Amen to that." Is it really that stable when you're in other people's hands? Yeah, totally. I could not agree more.
and so I just said, you know what? And it's such I remember it's crystal clear saying, I could lose my job tomorrow. What's the difference? And so I was able to start my own business. And, you know, I always said, listen, I don't have to know the next 20 steps, but I
Mhm.
should probably know the next three or four. So
Mhm.
I've always operated like that. Launching a PR firm, launching two agencies, and then going into years later, launching a restaurant, which I didn't have any experience running a restaurant, but I said, okay, I got to surround myself with great people. But anytime you start a business, anytime you do anything, like, know the next few steps. And as you kind of navigate that, things will change. You
Mhm.
will learn and you will adapt. So I think it's the confidence that you are a problem solver. And
Mhm.
I think a great business solves a problem. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of how I think. My friends will attest I'm a problem solver.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. That comes through very clearly. Yeah, and also an entrepreneur. We can
Yeah,
feel your entrepreneurial
yeah,
spirit
yeah,
now, right? You can totally feel that. And yeah, so the advice in there that I'm hearing then is part of it is trust yourself. You had to trust yourself to do that, and at the same time have a few steps in mind, and then be flexible as you navigate those first few steps. But there's a lot, you talked about confidence in there, and you didn't use the word trust, but I was hearing that,
yeah.
trust yourself. Yeah, that's good. And have some plans.
Yeah, I mean, as the wise Clarkson said, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. And so
Uh-huh.
I always think that. I always think like, all right, if this doesn't take me down, I'm going to be stronger for it. And so, yeah, and I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they talked about like, how are you fearless? And
Mhm.
to me, I don't think there's such a thing as being fearless. I think there's something about being brave and courageous, which is
Yeah.
you do it anyways, even though you're scared, right?
Yeah.
It's facing your fears that makes you brave and courageous. I don't think there's one human being that's fearless. And so as much as people say, fearless female, I think that's a cool idea and philosophy, and I don't negate that saying, but that's a fallacy. I think
I
you're
totally
stronger when you
agree.
face your fears.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite books in my 30s was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took that on as my theme. Yeah, I don't believe in fearlessness either. I believe in courage.
Yes.
I
Yes.
believe in letting your fear show you what you need to watch out for, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think when you fear something, there's a lesson there.
mhm.
What makes you fear that?
Yeah.
And then you go there. And you can decide, okay, I'm ready to face it, or I've got to put some parameters in before I'm ready to. So
Yeah.
it's like a huge teacher, fear.
Absolutely is. It absolutely is. So I'm going to take us to another chapter of your life. We're going to, and you fill in whatever you want in between. But you had been so successful as a businesswoman on every level. And then you made a very dramatic decision, I would say, and a purposeful decision about launching the Boundless Futures Foundation. And I want to just take a moment to say, Boundless Futures Foundation supports women social entrepreneurs, and Women's Impact Alliance has had the really wonderful fortune to receive one of their grants to help bring in more women social entrepreneurs into our community. So first, I want to say thank you so much, Soon, because you have supported a lot of women coming through our Empowered Leader program, and we so appreciate that. And I know they do too. But that's a really big decision to go from, really soaring in your businesses to deciding to fully turn to giving back. So tell us about how you made that
Mhm.
decision, why you made that decision.
Yeah, I think, as I was nearing 50, as in golf terms, you're on the second half of you're on the back nine, right? I started to really have some reflections on my life. And to me, while I love helping others, I, I think the best way to help others is to figure out how to help them help themselves, right? Giving fish or teaching them how to fish, right?
Mhm.
And so I really started to think about that. And I started to think about, okay, what has made me who I am? I think it's the sense of independence and that no matter what, I'm going to land on my feet because I've been able to create my own narrative of what I want my life to be. And so I felt like, you know, combining those things that I talked about, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you think you're good in, and the things that the world needs. And so that's why I created the Boundless Futures Foundation. This idea that if I can use my talent and my experience and some resources that we were given after we took our company Hagerty public, I can knit those together and create a foundation that helps women. Because
Mhm.
even though I donate to charity, like I think most everybody does in their own way, to me, helping women transforms communities because there's this boundless impact.
Mhm.
If women can be financially independent, if they can help support their families, if they can help support their communities, it's this cyclical effect. Where
Absolutely.
so I think business is truly powerful to
Mhm.
transform lives.
Yeah. It's so true. And there's so many studies that show when women when women have access to money and resources, communities grow, the health of the community gets better, the children are better taken care of, all of that. There are countless studies about that. And you're so right about the kind of creating that independence. I volunteered for many years, and one of my longtime colleagues at this organization where we volunteered together is on the call today, Marla, called Business Council for Peace. And the tagline was, more jobs means less violence. We were working in post-conflict areas, and
Yeah.
it was all focused on women's jobs, women's businesses that employed a lot of women for this very reason that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that you did, and I want to, well, before we go there, I want to just bring up this really fun picture of you and your girls at
Mhm.
with the Fearless Girl. So tell us about that moment. I think it has to do with starting the Boundless Futures Foundation, right?
Yeah, so my husband's company, Hagerty, I left my agencies when he took it over as a family business. And what I love about my partnership with my husband is we have similar family stories.
Mm.
Hagerty was started in the basement of his parents' house, and they took this very small family business in this small town and really started to build this great company. And he asked me to join the company so we could make it global, so we can really grow it. And so when we took it public in December of 2021, of course, when you take your company public, you have some resources. And I'd mentioned it earlier. We decided to create this foundation after we sat around the dinner table with the girls and said, okay, we've got some resources. How are we going to help others? And they talked about like that experience of, growing up in this family business with his mom, their grandmother, at the seat of the table making really important decisions for the business. And the same thing with my parents. And then me starting three businesses, they just saw what the power of business and independent women can do.
Mm.
So that's why we launched that foundation, as I mentioned. But this is a photo that it was like the split second decision to take this photo with my daughter and my two stepdaughters. So I think most of you know about Fearless Girl in front of the bull right on Wall Street. They moved her over to the New York Stock Exchange the morning we went public. And I just saw this photo and I said, get over here. And so we muscle thing. And of course they were, excited to do it. And I captured that photo. And I think that to me, that photo says everything. It's really the reason for being for the foundation.
Mm, mm. I really love that it was your girls who were a big part of the inspiration to do that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, the girls, and I would say, the first female founder I ever admired, my mother.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. You have a strong female lineage for sure. Yeah. Now, the other thing I know that you did is you mentioned it in passing a moment ago was start a restaurant, and that also has a philanthropic event. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I wish I didn't remember I started a restaurant because that's 90% of my stress.
Oh, really?
Um,
Yeah. There, it's a hard business. Yeah.
yeah, it's probably the toughest business that, I've ever experienced. And any restaurateur I talk to, we are all like, "Oh, girl, we got to talk." It's always so somehow there's always wine mentioned when I talk about like being a restaurant owner.
Mhm.
So I run the two agencies that I started, and then when I moved to Michigan, I realized like there wasn't a lot of cultural diversity at all, both in people and food. So I started to make food for my family and friends. And I think a few of them on the call were some of the culprits who said, you should start a restaurant. And I was like, okay, I'm not a CFO, but this is probably not a good idea, right? This business model. But, a friend of mine also said, why don't you combine the things you love, which is, helping others, um, your passion for business, your passion for food. And so I developed a business plan, and the model is that for every dollar for every bowl that you buy from my restaurant, it's a Vietnamese restaurant, we'll donate $1 for Bold to Charity. And the rationale for that, or the reason for that, is it was my way to thank the US for taking my family in as immigrants. So
Beautiful.
that's kind of why I run it. And
Wow.
I kind of joke with some, some friends here is it's such a tough business that every week I'm like, okay, it's gonna be my last week. That's it. I'm shutting her down. I'm shutting her down. And then I go into the restaurant and there's always one or two customers who say, oh my God, I love your restaurant. And then a lot of them say, we love what you do for the community.
And yeah, and here I wanted to bring up this slide that you shared with me just to kind of give everybody a feel for it, that yeah, look at the big check that you're giving away to food rescue here and the people and just you can feel the spirit behind it, you can feel the spirit behind it. Don't give it up soon. Don't
It
make this your
lives
last
another,
week.
it lives another day. It lives another day.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And the idea of buy a bowl, give $1,
Yeah.
that's so powerful. I can feel your marketing background in that too. It just makes
Yeah.
so much sense, you get it right away.
Well, and it's interesting because I was looking at everybody on this call and I see somebody from Mozambique. I see, calls from all over the world. And, I was very intentional when I created this model. I was questioning, okay, do I just do local? And I said, I think we're a global community. And, I'm not from the US. I was born in Vietnam, even though I've been in the US most of my life. And so I was very intentional and said, I want everybody to come in and have an option of a local, national, or global charity. So it changes every quarter. I
Mhm.
think you have to think about humanity, not location.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There are no boundaries when you think of it that way. Mhm. Um, So you talked about an article, you shared an article with me that you recently wrote for the Forbes Business Council about advice for women that is a little bit different than men in terms of leadership. And with our community of women, I think that would be really relevant for you to share what sort of, I guess it's a paradigm or a perspective that you have on that. And I'm really interested to hear that.
Yeah, it was interesting because I kind of questioned like, okay, do women need different leadership advice than men? Isn't it just leadership?
Mhm.
And then as I started to navigate this world, particularly the last 5 years of really focusing my time and energy on helping women, it's a completely different ballgame.
Mm,
I think you can have the core tendencies as a leader, but I think how you navigate every meeting is different. I think there's nuances of being a woman that, don't apply to men. So I think it made a lot of sense to be able to say, okay, what are those nuances that we have to consider? And I think it's I think the first is this sense of this emotional intelligence tightrope. I think whether it's fair or not, I think when a woman is assertive, she's labeled aggressive, right?
mhm,
And when a man is assertive or aggressive, he's labeled strong.
mhm.
There's research that shows this is not just an opinion. And
Right.
so I think you have to be able to balance that really well. And I think the way to do that is just to be decisive in your convictions, but do it in a very strategic, empathetic way. Be
Mhm,
thoughtful in how you're putting things out there, knowing this, even though it's unfair,
mhm,
know that those same rules don't apply to you. So there's got to be this strategic empathy as you're delivering a challenging message. And I think you also, unfortunately, you have to be over prepared. uh,
mhm,
I think you more so than anything, it's life is not fair. And anytime my 13-year-old daughter says, "Oh, that's not fair," it's I sound like my mom. Life is fair. Even a good example is for years I worked for my husband's company, right? So I'm married to the CEO, right? Very scandalous, but no, I'm kidding. I'm married and life is not fair. So I earned my way. I've worked for 20 years in corporate before I joined working for him. And I was 5 minutes early to every meeting.
Mhm.
I followed through with every promise because I knew the spotlight was on me, right? I didn't take anything for granted. I think that's the same way about being a woman in any meeting. Like the spotlight's on you, especially if you're in a very male oriented world, like my entire life, which is automotive,
Mhm.
insurance, and believe it or not, restaurants are very, very male dominated.
Yeah, they are absolutely. So this is interesting because on the one hand, you're pointing out, as you said, it's just the truth. There's a different standard for women, and we have to be so aware of that. And you're saying, be over prepared, be to the meeting early, uh, be thoughtful about how you present your arguments. Now, the other side of the coin, I'd love to hear your point of view on is what are our superpowers? What is it that we have uniquely to offer? And I know these are general statements, they're generalizations, and it's not true for every woman or every man, whatever we're going to say next. But what are our superpowers that women uniquely bring to the table in terms of leadership?
Well, I think I mentioned it briefly, but I think it's an inherent nature that we are much more empathetic.
Hmm.
I think we see people in general more than men. We see the totality of people, we see the totality of ideas. And so I think we have this ability to not have tunnel vision. So I think our ability to lead is a lot stronger. And there's research that is starting to really show that women-led companies have more returns than many male-led companies. And so I think our ability to lead is our superpower. And I'm sure there's moms who, are working only in the home and they're the CEO of their world and the CEO of their life, and their ability to be able to navigate nuances in relationships is, I think, what their superpower is. And I think that goes as well in the office.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's, getting to that, again, I'm generalizing, but our natural ability in relationships, creating relationships, weaving relationships, and how that is a different style of leadership. It's less about domination, which I'm not going to put that as a completely male
Right, right,
characteristic because
right.
certainly women can be very dominating as well. But this ability to weave relationships, I think, creates a much more inclusive, collaborative, cooperative environment, and that is a kind of a leadership superpower.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and just really, I feel like that's something that we could all really take on and lean into and recognize and appreciate and celebrate, because I don't think it is typically a skill that is as recognized in the standard leadership paradigm, is that ability to create relationships, and that empathy at the core of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's something that I really believe in. Is just, you know, uh, this idea of collaboration. So last week I was at a conference in Las Vegas doing a talk to, I'd say 70 female founders and leaders. And I got this question, and it was, what is your philosophy of surrounding yourself with great people?
Mm.
And I think my friends have heard me say this over and over, which is I want to surround myself with people who want others to win. Not just
Oh,
not
wow.
just me to win, but others to win.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the beauty of relationships. It's like, you know, you have to surround yourself with people who want others to win. Like they want others to shine. That's somebody that I want to be close to.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's to me very powerful, both in work, but more importantly in business.
Hmm.
Because when you're with somebody who wants others to win, that person is confident in themselves. They're a learner, they grow, they're open to new ideas. And so to me, it's like if I see somebody who's got that energy, I am their new best friend. I'm their new stalker because like I want some of that energy. So this idea that you are who you surround yourself with, the top 5 people. I think that's so true. And so I'm very, very cognizant of that, and I'm very intentional. I want to surround myself with good people.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful evolution of the surrounding yourself with great people. Surrounding yourself with people who want others to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's definitely going to be one of the things I take away from our conversation today. It's really, it's so powerful because I know what you mean, and I feel like that's our team. That's
Yeah.
our WIA team, is we're a team of people who want others to win, and it's at the core of our mission. And it's just, I hadn't articulated it that way before, and it's really powerful. It's really beautiful. It moves me, you
I
know.
mean, can you imagine how many of the problems that would be solved if we had that mentality?
Yeah. Yeah. How do I help others win? I love it. So I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So I think what I'm going to ask you next, I have a menu of questions for you. So I'm just looking at that. Oh, I think a good way to end the formal part of this is for you to share the principles that you work by.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have you talk about them before. We have a slide of it, but I'd love for you to just kind of talk about a little bit, and then we'll put them all together on the screen.
Yeah. I've talked a little bit about some of those in the natural Q&A. I think like the foundation of who I am is this concept of your narrative defines your reality.
Mhm.
It's, you know, any story you tell yourself is what is going to define your next actions. So make sure that story is forward thinking and it builds a sense of abundance, not
Mm.
negativity. So I think your narrative defines your reality to me is core to who I am. And something that's really relevant of the last, 5, 6 years is social media has just become like, a second habit is this idea of quieting the noise. I think
Mhm.
there's so much social media, there's so much content, there's so much advice that you can't even hear your own voice. You don't know who to listen to. And I think until you can quiet the noise, that's the only way for you to hear your own tuition that's going to tell you what's next. It's going to tell you what's right for you. So I think this idea of quieting the noise is, I think, is very powerful to this day. And I'm religious about, just disciplined about waking up in the morning, journaling and meditating for 15 minutes before I look at any device, before I
Mm.
answer any email. Because there are some days Grumpy Soon shows up in the morning and you do not want to see her. And so I have to quiet the noise in my own head so I can show up. I actually had this situation at my restaurant, a huge HR issue that could have really gone negatively. And, I use stoicism. I'm a big student of stoicism. And I just distanced myself from it. And I said, I'm really stressed in this situation. Whichever decision I make is going to come from a place of stress and not intention. And so I gave myself the space and I showed up so much better. So I think like the ability to quiet the noise and give yourself the distance between what happens and how you react to it, I think is very powerful.
Mhm.
I mean, I would also say this idea of growth and comfort do not coexist. And I think every single inflection point of quote success has come from me having to solve a huge challenge, you know, like becoming a refugee, moving to LA without a job and trying to land a job there. Um, you know, Starting my own business 48 hours after not getting the opportunity to run my boss's business. It's
Mhm.
all shaped me into saying, okay, the toughest moments were my biggest periods of growth. You
Mhm.
have to push yourself. And I think if you are not uncomfortable, you're standing still, you're not growing. And it's
Mhm.
hard. Trust me, some days I'm like, I just want to stand still. I want to get a massage, but
Enough of this learning
enough
stuff.
of, yeah, enough of this learning stuff. It's Thursday. I don't want to be a learner, but I do think it's the most powerful medicine you can give yourself is the
Yeah,
ability to move past discomfort.
that's great. So I'm going to just bring up this slide because that was a lot. I want people to be able to kind of see it and absorb it for a moment. Oh, there was one last one, create what's missing.
Yeah. And, I think we talked about it, which is really, you know, it's really about looking around and saying, what are the things you care about? What are the things that are missing? What are the things you're good at? Those are the three questions that you should be asking yourself if you want to create this boundless life. And how are you going to knit those things together? And a good example is that is the restaurant, right? I missed Vietnamese food. I love philanthropy, and this is my way to give back. So I knitted those things together, and I think the same thing with the foundation. It's being a female on seeing the experience of female entrepreneurs like changed my life. And I said, okay, so how can I take that and knit it together to create something that is meaningful for me and hopefully for others.
Mhm. These are powerful maxims. Thank you, Soon, for sharing those. I'm going to leave them up for another moment in case anybody is madly scribbling them down. Um, and we're going to move into Q&A time.
Great.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. And so let's see, how do we see? Oh, you can raise your hand if you know. Does everybody know how to raise their hand on Zoom without raising your physical hand? Like, the little hand thing? Where is that? Is that under, gosh, I don't even remember how to do it. Emily, where is the raise your hand on Zoom?
It's
Oh,
under React, and there's a raise hand gesture in there.
oh, great. Okay. So yeah, there it is. So raise your hand if you have a question for Soon. And it's great if we can hear your voice rather than put it in the chat. So who has, or just speak up, who has a question or a comment on something that Soon said today? Don't be shy. I know there's someone out there. Oh, Michelle. Okay.
Yeah,
Michelle,
hi.
take yourself off mute.
All right. Hi, Soon. That was really inspiring. Thanks for speaking with us. It has me curious, like in your most difficult moments, what helps you recover and get back into that action mode?
Do you want the appropriate answer or do you want
No.
lots of sincere? Lots of sincere. Um, you know, I mentioned it earlier. I think I've really changed the way I manage my stress and manage my obstacles being a student of stoicism. I think we can all kind of attest to this. Being an A-type personality, you just want to get to the solution quickly, right? You just want to check it off the list. This happened. I've got a solution. This happened to me earlier this week, as I mentioned. I have to create that distance. I have to say, okay, I'm tired. I'm stressed. This person just hit me at a place where it really is testing. And you have to reflect. I think the ability to distance yourself from what happens and how to react to it will make you a better person and more intentional. And honestly, less regretful. I think the biggest mistakes I've made is not paying attention to how I respond in the moment. So I think giving yourself the space to really think through, these are the three avenues that I'm feeling. Which one is going to be the most impactful?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Brittany.
Hi. Hi, Soon.
Hey.
How's it
Uh-oh.
going?
Uh-oh.
No, this is it's a good question, I promise. So we all know, of course, you're a very independent, confident businesswoman. It's something we admire. I admire in you. And I know you've had a lot of great mentors in your life, your mom being one of them, and also McKeel. I'm curious, who else do you go to, or do you have other mentors you rely on, or?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. You know, my friends are my mentors.
Yeah.
It's funny. I did this speech last week that I mentioned, and I know the best practice is that you should practice your speech before you go up and wing it. And so I invited a few of my friends over, and Brittany, you were one of them. And I think I learned from my friends. And so I think a mentor is anybody who has something to give that you're willing to receive and be open to. To me, I think that's really important. I don't have a formal mentor. Um, I just, like I said, I quiet the noise and I'll ask for advice and then I'll say, okay, what resonates with me? So I think the ability to
Intuition.
look at your kids as a mentor, look at your friends as a mentor, I think is really powerful.
Great. And then also it sounds like intuition, just trusting your own.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And but you can't have that until you quiet the noise. You can't have that until you have that space. So there's like the maxims that I talked about, Athena, really build on top of each other.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Quiet the noise, I think, is so key. I really love this piece you're talking about of creating some distance and being choiceful about your reaction. I had something happen in the last day that I had my first reaction was not one that I would want to share. And I really did. It is a practice to go, okay, step back. And I said to my husband, okay, I'm just being reactive now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. It didn't have to do with him. It had to do with someone else. Like, I'm not going to respond because I can't trust this response.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah. I
gonna
mean, you
have
have that,
impact.
it's a very innate fight or flight situation, and that's not always the best. And it's funny, my husband, because I'm not perfect in this, right? My goal is like, I'd like to have an A minus. 8 out of 10 times I show up my best self, and those other 2 times I'm kind of the Tasmanian devil, right? But that's pretty good. A minus is not bad. But whenever I show up not my best self, my husband has a very funny thing. He says, well, that's an honest reaction. What about a good reaction? I'm like, okay, got it. So I always say, okay, what I'm experiencing is an honest reaction, but is that
Yeah.
the best reaction?
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're all human, right?
Yeah, taking that time to take the distance. And also, Brittany, I love that you brought up intuition, because I think
Yeah.
is such a powerful guide for us when we can quiet the noise and hear that intuition. Let's see, we also have a question in the chat from Jamie. How did you balance raising a family with the businesses you created?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I got that question last week when I was in Vegas as well. And I'm going to have probably maybe an unpopular answer, which is I don't really think you can. I think you prioritize in the seasons of your life, which is okay. When I launched my first business, I knew I was going all in, right? I didn't have kids yet, but I knew, okay, the next 3 months, or when I did have kids, the next 3 months is going to be hell. So I tell my family, guys, I'm really sorry, but this is going to be a tough 3 months for me. So you set the expectations of people around you. And I think that's your prioritization. I think to also answer that question, again, I talked about the second half of my life. I heard this quote, or this statistic rather, when my daughter was almost 11, and it said, the fastest growing group that considers suicide is girls between the ages of 6 to 12. And that's when I said, that's partly why I transitioned from corporate and just said, my season of priority is her.
Mhm.
So I quit my job full time at Hagerty, and now I work 10 to 3 versus 8:30 to 5:30. So now I'm disciplined from 10 to 3. I've got to rock work, and then I pick her up every single day.
Mm.
So I think it's a balance between setting the expectations with those around you to say, listen, I'm going to be knee deep for the next week or 2 weeks or 3 months. And then also saying, okay, what are your priorities? Like, what is going to make you whole? And I think the idea that if anything were to happen to her, I could have had some control over that. And so I
Yeah.
chose a very tough decision. And it was, every single day, it was the right one. Listen to
Yeah.
your intuition. That's what we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that also has so much to do with your values. You know,
Yeah.
we talk a
Yeah.
lot in coaching about values, and your top 4 values may never change, but the priority may change,
Yeah.
you know. So the value around really being present for your daughter in this critical time of her life just pop to the top, and then you're going to honor that value. It doesn't
Right.
mean you don't still have a value about being productive in business and giving back in the world and all of that, but those are not as high a priority at the moment. You know, one of my mentors used to say, ask the question, what's important now?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
important
That's
now?
right.
It's not always the same.
Yeah. I just asked myself, what season are you in?
Yeah.
Right? What season are you in?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Corinne has her hand up. Corinne, what's your question for Soon?
Hi, thank you. So my question is, what is a moment, or what are some moments that stick out in your mind where you felt really proud of yourself?
Oh,
Nice question.
oh, that's a great question. You know, I would have to say just recently, last week, and it's funny as women, it's hard for us to say those things, right? Like, I'm proud of myself. I mean, why? Why? You can tell your friend you're proud of them so quickly, but yet you can't tell yourself you're proud. It's interesting because I did that talk and it was in front of 70 or 80 women I'd never met. Similar to today, it's a little nerve-wracking, by the way. And I got up in front of the stage, and the organizer asked me to talk about my life and my journey. And I said, well, how long do I have? And she said, 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, all right, let's do this. And it was so nerve-wracking. I mean, and I think we all, everybody knows public speaking is the second biggest fear, or a first fear. Second is death. Okay, that's not encouraging.
Right.
But, I pushed myself through it, and I did it. But we all are in this depths of nervousness when that happens. It's like even down to things like, I really hope my flight doesn't make it, right? Maybe somebody will I'll break my leg, or all those things. But I have to tell you, I was so proud of myself afterwards, because I think, and my friends texted me and said, how did it go? And I said, I never say this, but I said, I nailed it. I nailed it.
Mm.
And I would have never been able to feel that sense of accomplishment had I not faced my fear, and had I not tried it. So I was, isn't it weird as women, we even have to say, never say this, but,
Yeah.
so it's like, but yet we can tell a friend very quickly, I'm proud of you, but we can't tell ourselves.
Mhm. I think that's a habit we could change,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Corinne. And I know, Ramona, you had a question. You want to come off mute and ask it?
Yeah, hi Soon. Thank you so
Hi.
much. This is so inspiring. My question was, how often do you create a long-term vision for yourself?
How often? I think it goes back to like that idea I discussed, which is not having all the answers and knowing the next 3 or 4 steps. And when I launched, a good example is when I started the restaurant, I said, okay, I'm going to go all in this restaurant. I'm going to create a restaurant that generally give away between $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And I'm going to have 20 restaurants, and I'm going to be giving $1 million to charity, which sounds really incredible on paper until I actually did. It's like, I want to close down this one restaurant that So I would say, just to get tactical, a 5-year plan, because in 2 years it changes, right? 3 years it changes. I think it's important to write down what your values are. That doesn't change, but where your values take you will change. I would have never imagined quitting corporate full time because of that statistic that I heard.
Yeah.
But it was my intuition that I knew it was the right choice. And I had mentioned this to a few of my friends. My daughter had a boyfriend, and she broke up with him, and I walked her through it. She's 13. So and she said to me the next morning, Mom, I don't know how girls break up with their boyfriends without a mom.
Oh,
And I just like, I made the right decision.
yes.
So it's like you can have a long-term plan, but understand that flexibility and life happenings will really steer you in a different direction. It may not derail you, but it might really steer you in actually a better path. I feel like I'm exactly where I need to be, if not in a better place, in that piece of paper plan.
Yeah. When you say that, you're exactly where you need to be. I think everyone on the call would agree with me that you can feel that in you. Like
Yeah.
you are emanating the I'm exactly where I need to be vibe. Am I right, everybody? Yes. You are so solid. It's really beautiful to hear your clarity and also your vulnerability. It's a very inspiring combination of qualities that you bring, Soon. And we're right up almost at the top of the hour. So I want to take a moment to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your presence and just your really beautiful, solid energy. It's such a privilege to be with you.
Well, you all promised to stay in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. I didn't get a chance to talk to all of you. I'm so excited to meet so many of you. So please contact me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And when you come to Traverse City, I'll give you a bowl of pho. At least for the next couple of months. We'll figure this out.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your
exciting.
time. I thank you, Athena and Women's Impact Alliance. This was really joyful. I really
It's been
enjoyed
our
it.
pleasure. And before we say goodbye to everyone, I want to mention that we have some really wonderful events throughout the year. And this is one of them, Global Ignite. We also have a series called the Empower Hour, where we have our amazing, just such talented coaches in our community. We'll have one come and speak on a very relevant topic to women leaders and social impact. So watch for that. I think Emily put in the chat a place to sign up for our newsletter, and then you'll hear about the different events. And if you are someone who is interested in one of our programs, we have the Empowered Leader program opening in January. So watch for that. We just completed our application period and we're right in the process of welcoming our new catalyst to the program. So if that's you in the future, watch out for that. So I just want to thank everyone so much for spending your time with us today and for joining us in enjoying this beautiful conversation with Soon. And Soon, thank you for the good work that you are doing in the world. You are really an inspiration for living on purpose and being a generous spirit. So thank you, Soon.
Go women.
Go women.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.